At 1:30 a.m. on August 8, 1975, the Banqiao Dam in China's Henan Province failed. The sound was described by a survivor as the sky collapsing and the earth cracking. What followed was a chain reaction. 62 dams failed, releasing a wall of water that erased cities from the map. This is the story of a so-called Iron Dam, a symbol of national power that led to one of the deadliest structural failures in history. The official death toll from the flood was 26,000, but subsequent famine and epidemics raised estimates to as high as 240,000. It's a story of critical engineering flaws, political ideology overriding science, and a government cover-up that hid the world's worst dam disaster for 3 decades. Before we continue, this channel covers what history did to human bodies and systems, not myths. Comment where you're watching from, and if this is worth your time, like and subscribe. This story begins in the 1950s. After the Communist Party took power in 1949, China was a nation driven by ambition. Chairman Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward was a campaign to rapidly transform China from an agricultural society into an industrial power. A core belief of this era was that human will could conquer nature. Nothing symbolized this more than building dams. Before 1949, China had just 22 large dams. In the following decades, a construction frenzy began, equating the harnessing of rivers with national progress. The Huai River Basin, historically prone to floods, became a focus. After severe flooding in 1949 and 1950, a plan was approved to build a network of dams to control the watershed. The centerpiece was the Banqiao Dam, built on the Ru River with help from Soviet engineers between 1951 and 1952. Its purpose was flood control, irrigation, and power generation. But the project was compromised from the start. A leading hydrologist, Chen Xing, was chief engineer. He was a voice of caution, arguing that the political obsession with storing water for irrigation ignored a dam's primary function, flood control. He warned that building so many dams could dangerously alter the water table and actually increase flood risk. For Banqiao specifically, Chen's design called for 12 sluice gates, the outlets that discharge water to prevent overflow. His calculations were based on the dam's ability to withstand extreme weather. But a provincial official dismissed his proposal as too conservative. To cut costs, the number of gates was reduced from 12 to 5. For voicing these concerns, Chen Xing was labeled a right-wing opportunist and removed from the project. His engineering expertise was overruled by political goals. Soon after the dam was completed, cracks appeared in the structure. It was repaired and reinforced between 1955 and 1956. Afterward, officials declared it unbreakable, nicknaming it the Iron Dam. To the people living downstream, the dam was a promise of safety. It was designed to withstand a once-in-a-thousand-year flood. For 20 years, the dam stood and the promise seemed real. But the fatal flaws in its design were a ticking time bomb. In early August 1975, that time bomb began ticking faster. A tropical disturbance in the Philippine Sea intensified into Super Typhoon Nina. It hit Taiwan before weakening as it moved toward mainland China. Meteorologists expected it to dissipate. Instead, it collided with a cold front over central China, blocking its path. The storm stalled over Henan Province for 3 days. What followed was a rainfall event that shattered all records. The Banqiao Dam was built to handle a 1,000-year flood, defined as 300 millimeters of rain in a day. But on August 7th, Typhoon Nina dumped over 1,060 millimeters, more than a year's worth of rain in a single 24-hour period. Some areas recorded world record downpours of 830 millimeters in just 6 hours. At the dam, the reservoir was rising at an alarming rate. On August 5th, it was already near capacity. By August 6th, phone lines to upstream weather stations were down. The operators were now blind. Their only option was to open the 5 sluice gates. But a second critical flaw became apparent. The policy of prioritizing water storage meant silt had been allowed to build up for years. Now, that sediment was blocking the gates, preventing them from opening fully. The water was pouring into the reservoir far faster than it could be released. Desperate requests for emergency measures went unanswered. The lines were dead. By the evening of August 7th, water began spilling over the top of the dam. Workers formed a human chain, frantically trying to raise the crest with sandbags in a futile attempt to hold back the river. Just after 1 a.m. on August 8th, the rain suddenly stopped and the stars came out. A worker reportedly shouted that the flood was retreating, but it was a cruel illusion. An official on site understood. The sudden drop didn't mean the water was receding, it meant the water had found a new way out. A few seconds later, the ground shook. At approximately 1:30 a.m. on August 8, 1975, the iron dam broke. Banqiao was an earthen dam made of a clay core and a sand shell. The water spilling over the top rapidly eroded the structure. The small breach grew until the entire dam gave way. In the 6 hours it took for the reservoir to drain, nearly 600 million cubic meters of water were unleashed. It wasn't a flood, it was an inland tsunami. A wall of water up to 10 meters, 33 feet high and 12 kilometers, 7 miles wide, tore through the valley at nearly 50 kilometers, 30 miles per hour. The town of Daowencheng, directly downstream, was destroyed instantly. All 9,600 of its residents were killed. The wave pulverized everything in its path. Homes, roads, and bridges were swept away. But the failure was just beginning. Banqiao was the first domino. The surge of water slammed into the dozens of other smaller, poorly constructed dams built during the Great Leap Forward. They stood no chance. The Shimantan Dam, the second largest in the system, held for only half an hour before it too collapsed. In a terrifying chain reaction, a total of 62 dams failed. Each collapse amplified the flood's destructive force. There had been no effective warning. For most people, the first and only alert was the thunderous roar of the approaching water. In hours, an area of over 12,000 square kilometers was submerged. The promise of the iron dam was broken. The sun rose on a transformed landscape. Henan Province was now a vast murky inland sea. An estimated 5 to 6.8 million houses were destroyed. Entire counties were submerged. The main railway line from Beijing to Guangzhou was severed for over 2 weeks. The human cost was catastrophic. The official figure for immediate deaths from the flood was 26,000. But for the survivors, a worse ordeal was beginning. An estimated 1.1 million people were trapped for weeks on rooftops and high ground, surrounded by contaminated water. Relief efforts were nearly impossible. Roads were gone. Food and supplies had to be airdropped, but much of it landed in the filthy water and rotted. Survivors ate tree bark and fought over floating animal carcasses to survive. The stagnant water, filled with debris and corpses, became a breeding ground for disease. Epidemics of cholera and dysentery swept through the population. In the weeks and months that followed, it's estimated that another 145,000 people died from starvation and disease. The total death toll estimates range from 26,000 to 240,000. By any metric, the failure of the Banqiao Dam was one of the deadliest structural failures in human history. A disaster of this scale should have been global news. Instead, it was met with silence. The collapse occurred during the political turmoil of the Cultural Revolution. Admitting to such a catastrophic failure was a major political embarrassment, contradicting the party's narrative of infallibility. So the Chinese government hid the disaster from its own people and the world. The affected region was sealed off. No journalists were allowed in. The catastrophe was classified as a state secret. For decades, the true scale of the event remained hidden in confidential reports. The truth emerged only in fragments. A 1995 Human Rights Watch report brought an estimated death toll of 230,000 to international attention. It wasn't until 2005, 30 years after the event, that the Chinese government officially declassified its internal records. Only then could the full picture of the engineering flaws, ignored warnings, and the true human cost be assembled. The official narrative had always blamed the once-in-2,000-year flood. The declassified documents confirmed this was not just a natural disaster. It was a man-made catastrophe, compounded by negligence and hubris, then deliberately concealed to protect a political image. In the years following the disaster, many of the 62 dams were rebuilt, including a new, stronger Banqiao Dam, completed in 1993. The hydrologist Chen Xing, who was punished for his warnings, was brought back to consult on the aftermath, his expertise finally valued when it was too late. The story of the Banqiao Dam is a case study in the dangers of political ideology overriding scientific principles. The Iron Dam wasn't just built from clay and sand, it was built on a foundation of political ambition. The disaster also demonstrates the mechanics of cascading failure. The 62 dams were an interconnected system. The failure of one put an unbearable load on the next, creating a domino effect with exponential consequences, a principle that applies to any complex interconnected system. Finally, the 30-year cover-up shows the cost of secrecy. Hiding the truth didn't undo the damage. It denied the victims their history and prevented the world from learning from the failure. The story of the thousands who died in August 1975 is a stark reminder that the laws of physics are indifferent to political will, and that the truth, no matter how deep it's buried, eventually surfaces. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shape our world. Thanks for watching.